what's practical for human beings, what's good for human beings, is both what's good for our entire nature, which is a unity of mind, body, and soul. So I think one of the issues in the modern world is that when we hear the word practical, we immediately turn to our embodied nature and our material nature. That ultimately what's good for us is what helps human beings satisfy these basic needs of food, income, survival, reproduction. That's practical. But this is not the sense in which Aristotle would have been using the word practical. He would have been using the word, what's practical for human beings is what helps them use their faculties as they were intended to be used. And those faculties are not only material embodied, but they're also spiritual in nature. They're contemplative. We have a mind that is not simply an instrument to help us satisfy these basic needs, but has a life, has an ethos, has a spirit that wants to be fed, right? So I think what I would see in my students so much was that they had never stopped to ponder the idea that their minds are more than a supercomputer, that their minds are actually have capacities of intuition, imagination, awe, wonder, contemplation, and that in fact, to be a good human being, a practical education has to take this wonderful raw material we're given of the contemplative side of us and shape that and form that. And so what a liberal arts education is supposed to do is educate the entire person, mind, body, and soul. And because a liberal arts education is grounded in this holistic view of the person, it is more practical than an education which exclusively prepares us to use the embodied aspects of our nature to fulfill our bodily needs while neglecting our spiritual needs as somehow, dare I say, epiphenomenal, that is secondary, as opposed to a primary, a basic, a fundamental, an elementary need. So I think what I mean when I say a liberal arts education is practical is that it's more in accord with our nature than with a purely technical kind of education, which, of course, a writer like John Henry Newman, who was writing in the end of the 18th century, when he extolled the importance of liberal arts education in a series of lectures he gave in Ireland, which the series of lectures came to be called The Idea of a University. He was precisely saying that in the modern world, with all of our wonderful scientific, technological advancements, we absolutely should embrace a system of education that prepares us to participate in the wonderful things we can do with technology. But we should not leave behind these fundamental questions of who we are as human beings, what is human nature, and what is our ultimate good. And he was speaking to a country of Ireland that was seeking to come out of the grips of having been a colony of England so long, where people were being denied an education. And so in education for freedom and for participation in the modern world needs to be practical in the sense of being integrated.
I really like your emphasis upon ends and formation, right? To make a claim that an education is practical in a Thomistic and an Aristotelian sense is to suggest that the goal is some kind of formation that completes us somehow, that forms us as we ought to be, and toward, in Aristotle's word, happiness or completion. And seems to be a pretty sharp contrast to the kinds of things that we'll be talking about later, which are essentially transformational ideas, that power to transformation as opposed to knowledge that seeks to understand, to help develop the habits and virtues.